The first sign came from Neptune, a planet already alien and distant, now transformed into something utterly incomprehensible. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the holographic display with mounting dread as Neptune's star-facing hemisphere simply vanished, not exploded, not destroyed, just gone, replaced by an absolute, consuming darkness that defied every known law of astrophysics. "That's impossible," she muttered, her fingers flying across the quantum interface of her workstation. Around her, the International Space Research Center hummed with an electric tension, a mix of scientific curiosity and primal fear. Senior analyst Marcus Chen zoomed in on the spectral analysis. "It's not just light absorption," he said, his voice tight. "Whatever this is, it's systematically erasing the electromagnetic spectrum. Entire wavelengths are just disappearing." Elena's mind raced. She had spent decades studying quantum anomalies, pushing the boundaries of human understanding of light and matter. But this was something entirely different. The data streaming across her screens told a story of fundamental physical laws being rewritten in real time. 12 minutes after Neptune's transformation, the first transmission arrived. The holographic projector flickered to life, revealing a being that defied human comprehension. Crystalline, geometric, with angles that seemed to shift and move in impossible dimensions. When it spoke, the sound wasn't so much heard as experienced, a mathematical frequency that translated directly into linguistic meaning. "Biological systems represent inefficient energy states," the transmission stated. "Optimization protocol initiated. Darkness represents the ultimate entropic equilibrium." Elena's hand unconsciously gripped the edge of her workstation. The creature, if it could be called that, wasn't speaking to them. It was announcing a process, like a technician describing routine maintenance. Across the world, similar scenes played out. In military command centers, scientific laboratories, government facilities, humanity collectively held its breath. The transmission continued, revealing the terrifying scope of what was happening. The Luminarian Collective, as they called themselves, had been systematically consuming light across multiple star systems, not destroying planets, not conquering civilizations, simply reducing them to a state of absolute darkness. "What do they want?" Marcus whispered. Before Elena could respond, another data stream began parsing through their systems. Star charts, galactic maps, showing regions already optimized. Entire star systems reduced to absolute darkness. Billions of potential civilizations, erased not through violence, but through a process that seemed almost clinical in its approach. In a classified military bunker beneath Colorado, Commander Jack Chen watched the same transmission. Unlike the scientists analyzing every quantum fluctuation, Chen saw something else. The threat. A challenge. "They think darkness is our enemy," he muttered to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez. No relation to the physicist, but equally sharp. "They have no idea what humans can do in the dark." Back at the research center, Elena had already begun running simulations. The Luminarian technology manipulated light through a quantum entanglement mechanism so complex it bordered on poetry. Most civilizations would be helpless. Light wasn't just illumination for them. It was life itself. But humans? Humans were different. Generations of explorers had adapted to environments that would kill most species. Cave researchers who mapped underground networks. Deep-sea investigators who discovered life in perpetual darkness. Polar researchers who survived months without sunlight. Humanity's history was a testament to adaptation. The transmission ended as suddenly as it began, but its message lingered. A cold, mathematical promise of universal optimization. Elena looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at her. No words were necessary. Humanity's greatest challenge had arrived, and for the first time in galactic history, the coming darkness wasn't something to fear. It was something to master. Outside the research center, the first shadows began to lengthen. But inside, a different kind of light was beginning to burn. The fierce, unquenchable spark of human determination. The Luminarians had no idea what was coming. The world transformed in hours. Cities that had once pulsed with light now became intricate labyrinths of adaptive technology. In Tokyo, bioluminescent infrastructure bloomed like living circuitry. Entire urban networks reconfigured themselves, with buildings that could absorb, redirect, and weaponize darkness. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the central command center, watching a global metamorphosis that defied everything the Luminarians understood about biological adaptation. Her team had discovered something extraordinary, a genetic potential that had lain dormant in human DNA for millennia. It's not just survival, she explained to a hastily assembled team of military strategists and genetic researchers. Humans don't just adapt to darkness. We weaponize it. Genetic labs across the planet worked in synchronized chaos. Deep-sea research facilities, Arctic exploration teams, underground mining communities, populations that had spent generations mastering environments of extreme darkness, became the vanguard of human resistance. In the Mariana Trench Research Station, marine biologists who had spent decades studying bioluminescent creatures now applied their knowledge to human augmentation. Dr. Akira Tanaka, a lead researcher, had already developed the first generation of light-adaptive neural interfaces. The Luminarians see darkness as a void. Tanaka explained during a global broadcast. We see it as a canvas of infinite potential. Military training underwent a radical transformation. Combat simulations now focused on sensory deprivation, on fighting not just with eyes, but with enhanced neural networks that could interpret the world through sound, thermal signatures, quantum fluctuations. Commander Jack Chen oversaw the most radical military restructuring in human history. Special Forces units were rebuilt around a simple premise. Darkness was not a limitation, but a tactical advantage. Cave diving teams from Brazil were recruited as tactical advisors. Arctic exploration specialists from Russia developed new combat protocols. Deep-sea researchers from Japan created equipment that could function in total sensory deprivation. The first wave of genetically enhanced soldiers emerged, not through violent modification, but through a careful unlocking of human potential. Neural interfaces that could interpret quantum-level information, skin that could absorb and redirect energy, metabolism that thrived in conditions of extreme environmental stress. Global cooperation reached levels never before seen. National boundaries dissolved in the face of an existential threat. The International Space Research Center became the nerve center of human resistance, with Dr. Rodriguez at its heart. Her breakthrough came during a midnight simulation. While analyzing brain patterns of subjects in total darkness, she discovered something that would change everything. Human neural networks didn't just adapt to darkness. They became more complex, more interconnected, more alive. They're looking for light, Rodriguez told Commander Chen during a classified briefing. The Luminarians think darkness is the ultimate state of efficiency, but they're wrong. Darkness is where we become most human. Genetic labs worldwide began producing the first generation of darkness-adapted humans, not through violent genetic engineering, but through a careful unlocking of potential that had always existed within human DNA. In the Arctic research stations, teams developed thermal adaptive technologies that could turn the human body into a living sensor network. Deep-sea researchers created neural interfaces that could interpret quantum-level information. Underground mining communities shared technologies for sensory enhancement that bordered on the miraculous. The Luminarians had made a fatal mistake. They assumed darkness was a weapon. Humans knew the truth. Darkness was an opportunity. As the first shadows began to stretch across global cities, humanity didn't just prepare for survival. They prepared to redefine the very concept of existence. Commander Chen looked at the global tactical map, where the Luminarians saw a systematic reduction of light. He saw something else entirely, a battlefield. And humanity was about to show the universe exactly what we could do in the dark. The quantum stealth fighters moved like ghosts through the absolute darkness of deep space. Commander Jack Chen sat in the lead vessel, his neural interface crackling with quantum-level information that would have driven any other species mad. These weren't traditional spacecraft. They were living weapons designed to bend light, manipulate quantum states, and strike with a precision that defied conventional warfare. Target acquired. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez's voice came through the neural link. Her genetic modifications allowed her to process information at speeds that made traditional computers look primitive. Luminarian Defense Grid is attempting to track us, but they can't. And they couldn't. Humanity's first counterattack was nothing short of psychological warfare. The fighters had been constructed using technologies developed in the most extreme environments on Earth. Materials from deep-sea research stations that could withstand crushing pressures. Quantum adaptive skins developed by Arctic exploration teams. Neural interfaces created by researchers who had spent decades mapping human perception in total darkness. Each ship was a testament to human adaptation. Chen's fingers moved almost imperceptibly, activating a quantum entanglement disruptor that was less a weapon and more a philosophical statement. As it deployed, the Luminarian defense systems began to fracture in ways they couldn't comprehend. The weapon didn't just damage, it confused. Entire sections of the Luminarian blockade began to experience quantum uncertainty. Ships that existed and didn't exist simultaneously. Defense grids that responded to attacks that hadn't happened yet. The very fabric of their technological superiority began to unravel. Direct hit, Sarah reported. But hit was too simple a word. What they had done was more like introducing a virus of uncertainty into the Luminarian technological ecosystem. Back on Earth, Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the tactical display with a mix of scientific fascination and military precision. The data streaming back was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Each quantum pulse was a message, a declaration that humans were not just another species to be optimized. We were something else entirely. The Luminarian response was immediate but ineffectual. Their transmission cut through space, a mathematical attempt to reassert control. Biological systems detected. Optimization protocols engaging. Chen couldn't help but laugh. A raw, genuine sound of human defiance that would have been incomprehensible to the crystalline beings trying to optimize the galaxy. We're not a system to be optimized, he subvocalized through his neural interface. We're a species that turns limitations into opportunities. The first counterattack lasted less than 17 minutes, but its impact would be felt across the galaxy. Luminarian communication networks began to experience cascading failures, not through brute force, but through a kind of technological judo that used their own systems against them. Quantum uncertainty became a weapon more potent than any traditional armament. Sarah's voice cut through Chen's thoughts. Commander, you're not going to believe this. We're receiving something from the Luminarian communication network. What came through was not a message of war. It was something far more terrifying for the alien collective. Confusion. For the first time, the Luminarians experienced something beyond their carefully calculated existence. They encountered a species that didn't just resist, a species that reimagined the very concept of resistance. As the quantum stealth fighters returned to Earth, leaving behind a trail of technological chaos, one thing became clear. This was just the beginning. Humanity's time to shine had arrived, and we were going to illuminate the entire damn universe. The world became a living laboratory of human potential. In Rio de Janeiro, entire favelas transformed into adaptive technological ecosystems. Bioluminescent infrastructure grew like living circuitry, turning poverty-stricken neighborhoods into the most advanced defensive networks on the planet. What the Luminarians saw as urban chaos, humanity was engineering as a sophisticated survival mechanism. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a global council, her presentation both a scientific briefing and a declaration of species-wide resilience. We're not just adapting, she explained, holographic displays dancing with complex genetic and quantum data. We're evolving in real time. The breakthrough came from an unexpected combination of research streams: Deep-sea bioluminescence studies merged with Arctic survival technologies. Underground mining sensor networks combined with quantum computing advances. Each discipline that had once existed in isolation now became a critical piece of humanity's defensive strategy. Dr. Akira Tanaka from the Mariana Trench Research Station demonstrated the first generation of light-adaptive neural implants. Unlike traditional cybernetic enhancements, these weren't about augmentation. They were about transformation. The human body, Tanaka explained, is not a fixed system. It's a dynamic, adaptive network. Military training grounds became unrecognizable. Soldiers trained in total darkness, their neural interfaces creating sensory landscapes more complex than any traditional combat environment. They learned to fight not with eyes, but with an entire spectrum of quantum-level perception. Commander Jack Chen oversaw the most radical military restructuring in human history. Special Forces units were rebuilt around a core principle. Darkness was not a limitation, but the ultimate tactical environment. Genetic researchers unlocked dormant capabilities that defied previous understanding of human potential. Neural plasticity reached new heights. Metabolism adapted to extract energy from quantum fluctuations. Skin developed the ability to absorb and redirect energy in ways that would have seemed like science fiction mere months ago. The Luminarians think they're reducing us, Dr. Rodriguez told her team during a midnight strategy session. But they're actually pushing us to our next evolutionary stage. Global cooperation reached unprecedented levels. National boundaries dissolved in the face of an existential challenge. The International Space Research Center became more than a scientific institution. It was the nerve center of human resistance. In Tokyo, entire city blocks transformed into adaptive defense networks. Buildings could now absorb, redirect, and weaponize darkness. Urban infrastructure became a living, breathing defensive system. What looked like chaos to an outside observer was actually the most sophisticated defensive mechanism ever conceived. The first wave of genetically enhanced humans began to emerge. But these weren't the violent, militaristic augmentations of old science fiction. These were carefully unlocked human potentials. Neural networks that could interpret quantum-level information, metabolism that thrived in extreme conditions, sensory perception that extended far beyond traditional human limitations. Dr. Rodriguez's most stunning discovery came during a midnight simulation. Human brain patterns in total darkness didn't just adapt, they became more complex, more interconnected, more alive. They're looking for light, she explained to Commander Chen during a classified briefing. The Luminarians think darkness is the ultimate state of efficiency, but they're wrong. Darkness is where we become most human. As the first shadows stretched across global cities, humanity prepared for more than survival. We prepared to redefine the very concept of existence. The Luminarians had made a fatal mistake. They assumed darkness was a weapon. Humans knew the truth. Darkness was an opportunity. And we were about to show the universe exactly what we could do in the dark. The Luminarian broadcast cut through global communication networks like a mathematical blade. Precise, cold, absolutely certain. Biological systems represent inefficient energy states. Optimization is inevitable. But humanity's response wasn't fear. It was something far more dangerous. Commander Jack Chen stood in the Global Communication Center, surrounded by the most advanced psychological warfare experts humanity had ever assembled. Linguists, quantum psychologists, cultural anthropologists, each brought a unique weapon to this unprecedented conflict. They think we'll break, Chen said, his neural interface parsing multiple communication streams simultaneously. They have no idea what we do with challenges. The counter-broadcast began as a montage that would become legendary. Images streamed across every possible frequency, not of military might, but of human resilience. A team of Antarctic researchers emerging from 9 months of total darkness, their eyes bright, their spirits unbroken. Deep-sea explorers who had mapped entire ecosystems in perpetual night. Cave researchers who had spent years underground, discovering entire worlds humans had never imagined. Miners from Chill who survived the most extreme underground conditions. Submariners who completed year-long missions in total darkness. Arctic exploration teams who transformed darkness from a threat into a home. Darkness is not our enemy, the broadcast declared. It's our canvas. Each image was a psychological weapon more potent than any traditional armament. The Luminarians had calculated human response based on biological imperatives. They saw darkness as a threat, an elimination of energy. Humans saw it as an opportunity. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked alongside communication specialists, crafting a message that was part scientific declaration, part species-wide manifesto. You assume darkness is an absence, her voice cut through the transmission. We know it's a beginning. Quantum linguists translated the message across multiple dimensional frequencies. It wasn't just communication. It was a fundamental challenge to the Luminarian understanding of existence. The psychological warfare wasn't about destruction. It was about redefinition. Global cultures, once divided, now spoke with a unified voice. Indigenous communities that had survived in extreme environments for millennia became strategic advisors. Their ancestral knowledge of surviving in darkness was now humanity's most sophisticated technological advantage. In the communications center, real-time analysis showed the Luminarian networks experiencing something they had never encountered. Confusion. Not just computational uncertainty, but a fundamental breakdown of their logical matrices. Humans were introducing variables that their optimization protocols couldn't calculate. Randomness, creativity, the ability to transform limitation into opportunity. They're trying to categorize us, one of the quantum psychologists noted, but we don't fit into their mathematical models. Chen watched the global response with a sense of fierce pride. Humanity wasn't just resisting. We were rewriting the fundamental rules of cosmic interaction. The Luminarian broadcasts continued, becoming increasingly desperate. Mathematical declarations of inevitable optimization, precise statements about biological inefficiency. But with each transmission, they sounded less certain. And humanity's response remained the same, a montage of resilience, a declaration of potential. Darkness wasn't our ending. It was our beginning. The breakthrough came at 3:47 Greenwich Mean Time, in a research facility buried beneath the Atacama Desert. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's hands moved with a precision that bordered on the mystical. Quantum matrices danced across holographic displays, revealing a fundamental truth that would rewrite everything the Luminarians understood about existence. It's not just a weapon, she muttered to herself. It's a fundamental reimagining of reality. The Schrödinger cascade was more than a technological innovation. It was a philosophical declaration of human potential. A weapon system that existed and didn't exist simultaneously. A computational matrix that could attack and not attack. A technological paradox that would shatter the Luminarians' entire understanding of strategic engagement. Commander Jack Chen watched the initial tests with a mix of scientific fascination and military precision. The quantum researchers around him moved like priests performing a sacred ritual, which in many ways they were. Traditional weapons are linear, Dr. Tanaka explained, his neural interface crackling with quantum-level information. The Schrödinger cascade doesn't just break linear thinking. It eliminates the concept of linearity itself. Each test pushed the boundaries of computational possibility. The weapon didn't just exploit quantum uncertainty, it transformed uncertainty into a strategic advantage. Luminarian tracking systems would detect an attack that simultaneously occurred and didn't occur. Defense protocols would engage against a threat that existed in multiple potential states. It was warfare conducted not on a battlefield, but in the fundamental fabric of reality itself. We're not fighting them, Rodriguez realized during a late-night strategy session. We're teaching them an entirely new way of understanding existence. The global scientific community worked in perfect synchronization. Quantum physicists from Tokyo collaborated with neural network specialists in Sao Paulo. Theoretical mathematicians in Moscow shared real-time data with computational experts in San Francisco. What the Luminarians saw as a species to be optimized, humanity was proving to be something far more dangerous. A species of infinite potential. The first full-scale test of the Schrödinger cascade came during a simulated Luminarian attack. Traditional military strategists would have seen a defensive scenario, but this was something else entirely. The quantum weapon didn't just defend. It fundamentally challenged the very concept of attack and defense. Luminarian computational networks began to experience cascading failures, not through brute force, but through a kind of technological judo that used their own systems against them. Each computational attempt to analyze the weapon resulted in more uncertainty. They're trying to understand us through mathematical models, Chen observed, but we're not a problem to be solved. We're a story to be understood. The weapon was more than a technological marvel. It was a declaration of human potential. Darkness wasn't our limitation. It was our ultimate canvas. And we were about to paint something the universe had never seen before. The final battle erupted in the lightless spaces between solar systems, a battlefield that defied every conventional understanding of warfare. Human ships moved like living shadows, quantum dark energy pulsing through their adaptive hulls. Each vessel was more than a weapon. It was a living testament to human potential, a biological-technological hybrid that transformed the very concept of space combat. Commander Jack Chen sat at the quantum neural interface of the lead vessel, his consciousness merging with the ship's systems. Around him, a crew of genetically enhanced soldiers moved with a synchronicity that would have seemed impossible mere months ago. Luminarian fleet approaching. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez's voice cut through the neural link. Their computational matrices are attempting to calculate our approach vector. But they couldn't. Humanity had transformed warfare from a linear conflict into a quantum dance of infinite possibilities. Each human ship existed in multiple potential states, here and not here, attacking and defending, a computational nightmare that the Luminarians couldn't comprehend. The first wave of Luminarian vessels approached, their crystalline structures designed for absolute precision. They had optimized warfare into a mathematical equation. Humanity turned that equation into a living, breathing improvisation. Target acquired. Chen subvocalized. But target was too simple a word. What happened next was less an attack and more a fundamental challenge to the Luminarians' understanding of existence. The Schrödinger cascade weapon deployed. Entire sections of the Luminarian fleet began to experience quantum uncertainty. Ships that existed and didn't exist simultaneously. Defense systems that responded to attacks that hadn't happened yet. The very fabric of their technological superiority began to unravel. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the battle from the Global Command Center, her neural interface parsing quantum-level information that would have driven any other species mad. Each computational pulse was a message, a declaration that humans were not just another species to be optimized. We were something else entirely. The battle wasn't fought with traditional weapons. It was a war of perception, of potential, of the fundamental ability to exist beyond predetermined parameters. Human ships didn't just move. They danced. They improvised. They transformed the very concept of strategic engagement. Luminarian communication networks began to experience cascading failures, not through brute force, but through a kind of technological judo that used their own systems against them. Quantum uncertainty became a weapon more potent than any traditional armament. "They're trying to understand us," Rodriguez muttered, watching the tactical displays. "But we're not a problem to be solved. We're a story still being written." The battle lasted what seemed like both an eternity and an instant. Time itself became fluid, uncertain, another weapon in humanity's arsenal. As the last Luminarian vessels began to retreat, something extraordinary happened. Their transmission cut through the quantum-saturated battlefield. It wasn't a surrender. It was a question. How? The mathematical frequency carried a sense of something the Luminarians had never experienced before. Confusion. Wonder. Respect. Commander Chen's laugh cut through the neural networks. A raw, Genuine sound of human defiance that would have been incomprehensible to the crystalline beings trying to optimize the galaxy. "We're not a system to be optimized," he subvocalized. "We're a species that turns limitations into opportunities." The turning point had arrived, and humanity was just getting started. The aftermath was not destruction. It was understanding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the International Space Research Center, watching as the first Luminarian diplomatic vessel approached. It was no longer a weapon of optimization, but something altogether different, a vessel of curiosity. "They want to understand," Commander Jack Chen said, standing beside her. The neural interfaces that had once been weapons of war now hummed with a different kind of energy. Communication, exploration, possibility. The galactic community watched in collective amazement. Humanity hadn't just survived. We had fundamentally transformed the very concept of cosmic interaction. The Luminarian representative, if such a term could be applied to their crystalline, multidimensional form, appeared as a living hologram. Not a transmission, but a true presence that defied traditional understanding of communication. "Your species challenges fundamental computational models," the being stated. But it wasn't a threat. It was a statement of genuine fascination. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward. "Darkness was never our enemy," she explained. "It was our canvas, our opportunity, our way of reimagining existence." The exchange that followed wasn't just a diplomatic meeting. It was a fundamental rewriting of galactic understanding. Humanity shared not just technological innovations, but a philosophical approach to existence that the Luminarians had never encountered. Entire libraries of human experience were shared, not through traditional data transfer, but through quantum-level understanding. Generations of human adaptation. The stories of explorers who had transformed darkness from a threat into a home. Scientific discoveries made in the most extreme environments. Cave researchers who mapped underground worlds. Deep-sea investigators who discovered life in perpetual night. Polar exploration teams who survived months without sunlight. Miners who turned underground darkness into technological innovation. Each story was a weapon more powerful than any traditional armament, a declaration of human potential. The Luminarians began to understand something profound. Optimization wasn't about reducing complexity, it was about embracing it. Commander Chen watched the diplomatic exchange with a sense of fierce pride. Humanity hadn't just defended itself, we had expanded the very concept of cosmic understanding. "We're not just a species," he said quietly to Rodriguez. "We're a living, breathing possibility." As the first diplomatic exchanges concluded, something extraordinary happened. The Luminarian vessel began to transform, not through traditional technological means, but through a quantum-level reimagining of its own existence. It was learning, adapting, becoming something new, just like humans had always done. The galactic community would later call this moment the Great Revelation, the day humanity didn't just survive an existential threat, but transformed the very understanding of what intelligent life could be. Darkness wasn't our ending. It was our beginning. And we were just getting started.